Thank you for tuning in to Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid. In Season 2 of Hacks and Hobbies, we're visited by our amazing guests coming from all walks of life who want to learn their story, their struggles, and their journey on how they got to where they are today. So stick around. In today's episode, get to speak with my good friend Ian Tolson. He lives in my favorite state in the whole wide United States, Colorado. And one of the reasons I love Colorado is it was my very first experience to live on my own with my wife, because after we got married, we stayed with my parents back in California. So it was a great experience. We got to, make new friends. And I am a little bit jealous of Ian because he's living in this beautiful sunshine state. And literally, Colorado is a sunshine state. So how I met Ian is through the amazing group Johnny Boyben has started called So You Want a Podcast? And we've been chatting back and forth, sharing our stories. And I was like, hey, Ian, how about we get on the call and do a podcast? And here we are, Ian. Ian, tell us a little bit about yourself. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So I grew up in a small town called Whitefish, Montana. I lived there for about 18 years, got really interested in skateboarding. And at about the age of 17, I realized I wasn't able to go professional in it because in skateboarding, you basically have to be a Michael Jordan in the skateboarding industry. And so from there, I kind of tried to find different avenues. And so I got into bricklaying, I got into welding, I got into sales, and it's kind of turned into this nice, unique trend of network marketing and sales. So it's cool because there's this wide background experience that goes into a lot of practical application with getting to know people, relating with people on a lot of levels, because I was like a bike messenger for a bit and I grew up on a farm. I've lived in the city. I've just kind of been all around, snowboarding quite a bit too, and played basketball, just like talking with people and like having fun.
Awesome, dude. I mean, having such a rounded experience is super cool.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, bike messaging, bricklaying, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Because the cool thing about having so many different experiences, you understand people from many more backgrounds than if you just you're not that, you don't have that chip on your shoulder, oh, blah, blah, blah. You're much more down to earth. And, talking to you, you definitely sound like a down to earth guy.
Thank you.
Welcome. So what are you doing today? I mean, what makes you happening?
I feel like I've gotten way more motivated over these past couple weeks. Everything in network marketing, I've been doing trial and fail for probably the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And that was difficult. Today, though, and even just this last year alone, I've signed up more people. I've made more money than I ever have before. It's just all going in the right direction. My favorite recruitment cycle actually happened today, where I didn't even have to get on the phone with this gal. She just went and signed up. And that was the coolest thing ever, because I was dealing with some previous people in situations where it was like trying to pull teeth, and she was just, hey, I'm ready. I'm going to jump into it. It's like, I found out that this morning. So I was pretty pumped on that.
That's really cool.
Yeah, man. It's cool talking with you though, man. I like that you're into biking, that you have a kid, and
I have more than one kid.
You have more than one kid, right? So you have the baby, and then how many kids do you have?
I have a total of 3 kids.
Wow.
A 8-year-old and a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old.
Oh my gosh.
8 and 4, they can play by themselves.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have to be on the call, and
Uh-huh.
my wife's like, oh, I need to do grocery shopping. Well, if you can take the third one,
With
you're
you.
supposed to sleep, and you know they don't know what time to sleep.
Mhm.
Actually, they don't want to sleep.
Right. They
uh,
want to wake you up at 3 in the morning, though, right?
so yeah, man. So I love hobbies and involving your brain because, like, you did all these things, like stuffing bolts, laying decks, welding. So I would consider them. I don't know if I mean they are like well on full time jobs people do, right? And it opens a part of your mind where you're like, you see things from a totally different view. You
Mm,
can put things together. It's like it's like when you're building Lego pieces, you're
mhm,
following the instruction, and it's like, oh, whoa, wait, what did you do, and how did you come around and make this happen?
mhm, mhm,
It's like your mind opens up in so many different ways, and you're like, wow, okay, this is cool.
mhm.
So I like that I really liked about that about you,
Thanks.
having that experience.
Mhm,
And so skateboarding is really cool. So I have a little short story about skateboarding. Well, it's like just a little bit, and that's so I really grew up in Saudi Arabia, and skateboarding was very foreign to me. But when I came and visited the United States back in '85 or '89, I went back with a skateboard or two
mm,
because I was like 11, 12, and I was riding these skateboards, but I didn't really know what I was doing.
mhm,
So what we ended up using it for was
mhm.
a furniture dolly. So
Nice.
we would use it to move furniture around in the house.
I've actually used my skateboard as a furniture dolly before, so I
Yeah,
totally get
yeah,
it.
crazy.
Mhm,
And nowadays, I see these motorized skateboards, and you see Casey Neistat riding one in New York all the time. I'm like, it'd be really cool to get one of these things,
mhm,
and I just haven't had that uh, growth experience, like childhood experience, to be riding a skateboard. But
mm,
I did have experience riding bicycles because I would
mhm.
go around riding bicycles in Saudi. So tell me, what about skateboarding did you like the most?
It was the fact that I was always pushing myself.
Hmm.
I went from not being able I was able to, like, go down 2 steps,
Yeah.
and that was scary, and I got to the point where the highest stairs that I had dropped was 12, and the farthest gap I had cleared was 20 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, so I went from this point of being scared and timid, you could say, and actually being terrified for like 4 years of
Yeah.
my life just going in and skating, and it was fun and it was progressive, but I was terrified of it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So going from this point of terrified to accomplishment to comfort and being like, wow, I've done all this stuff. And honestly, I'm very grateful that I never went pro to begin with, because I've watched countless number of interviews on professional skateboarders, and they talk about all the injuries they
Yeah.
have ever had in the world. And I'm just so grateful that I was able to have that experience,
Mhm.
but then also look back on it and be like, this was a good stepping stone for me,
Yeah.
because it really pushes me. When I'm going for something now, I have this idea in my mind of, like, this is what it looks like in
Mhm.
terms of reflecting back on my past and going forward.
No, that's a really good point because literally you have to push yourself when you're
Mhm.
on a skateboard, unless you're going downhill.
Mm.
Like
Right.
you're literally pushing yourself
Mhm.
to keep moving. So that's a
Mhm.
really good analogy. I love it.
Thanks.
So tell me some more about how you came to be. I don't even know where I'm heading, but you had mentioned that you had some really crazy stories.
Oh, with biking?
Yeah, biking or
Yeah.
yeah. Tell me your biking story, like being a bike messenger. What's that like? And
Oh, in Denver, it's fun. I had to stop though because I was noticing some of the risks I was taking. And I'm honestly very lucky that I was very fortunate to get out and be injury free. It was funny because after I got out of bike messaging, I ended up having some of my worst accidents. But while I was in bike messaging, I remember it was just fun, man. There was this friend I was talking with you about named Priyam Shah. He looks a lot like you,
Mm-hmm.
and he had some of the fastest riding consistency speeds in the store, right?
Hmm.
And so my goal anyway, was kind of like, gotta like, I don't know, I had to like I wanted to like compete with him type of thing. And it became really fun
Yeah.
because it got to the point where I was matching his speeds and everything. And we were just going back to back. And it got to the point where he's like, how are you doing that? And I'm like, I don't know, man, but it's rad. And we would just go back and forth at each other. There were times though where there would be cars going down this one specific road. And I'm sure you know Lincoln, right downtown.
Hmm.
So that people are going probably like 25 to 35 on that road.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I would look at the road and I would debate about crossing it on my bike.
Mm.
And mind you, these cars are going sometimes 35 miles per hour. And I'm looking at the road and I'm like, I can make it. And I would bolt. And the thing is like, there was probably like four other cars like on the road, but I just had it so to a T that I made it across. And luckily I was on spot every single time because I mean, it was like car right behind me going 35, another car in front of me going 35, and just being able to just like go past this 4-lane road
Yeah.
and then get to the other side safely. It was just like, how did I even walk away from that, realistically speaking?
That's pretty gnarly, man.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, it was scary stuff. And you were mentioning you did biking in Saudi Arabia. Did you start biking in the States and then go over to Saudi Arabia, or?
So I grew up in Saudi Arabia, like when I was 7, uh,
Uh-huh.
like because I was born in Karachi, Pakistan,
Mhm.
and then around the 80s is when my dad got a job out in Saudi Arabia. So we basically, migrated to Saudi Arabia. So that's where I grew up. So
Mm.
in my childhood, we had different bikes, and then I would ride these bikes around. And towards the end, I had a mountain bike, and I would travel pretty far on it and go see my friends.
Mhm.
And I never learned my lesson of locking down my bike back there.
Mm.
And every single bike that I owned is now somebody else's bike.
Oh no. I know that feeling.
And I was like, I guess, Dad, you didn't never got me a lock and key or whatever,
Mhm,
because I would go to the grocery store and get groceries and bring them back. And I was like, nobody's gonna take it, but there's kids around, and
oh yeah.
people will take opportunities and pick them
Mhm,
up. So I was into basically just biking on the road, but I had different types of bikes at different points in my life.
mm,
But then when I moved to Colorado is when I was like, all right, I'm finally gonna get a mountain bike, because I had been talking about getting a mountain bike for like 6 years before I actually got one. And I was like, all right, let's go mountain biking. And I go the first time I go mountain biking with my buddy, and he's like, let's do night biking. I was like, why?
I wouldn't know.
So I'm out of shape, I haven't really, I just got the bike, you know,
Uh,
gotta ride more. So we go to this trail, and it's like the sun is going down, and I didn't really have a lighting system on my bike, and I'm like riding it, and then I'm like out of breath, and the sun's coming down, and like it's getting really dark, and all I have is a headlamp. So I turn around, and I'm like, all right, you guys keep going,
uh-huh.
don't wait up for me. I'm just gonna go back. So it's dark, and I'm going back, and I'm like trying to look, and I poke my eye with a tree branch. I was like, okay,
Ow.
so that hurt. And then I also left my gloves to where we started from. Luckily, the gloves were still there because I'm riding.
Uh-huh.
Like, where's my gloves? I just took them.
And it's dark, yeah.
Yeah, and it's dark, so I come back, like, all right, there the gloves are, and then pack everything, and I'm like still like rubbing my eye.
Mhm.
That's the thing, right? So everybody talks about getting onto a bike. You totally forget about all the other things that you need,
Mm.
right? So
Mhm.
that was my experience with mountain biking. I was like continuing mountain biking, and I got better. And when I moved here to Virginia, that's when I got into road biking. So 2 years ago, I met this team out here and in Virginia. Like, dude, we go road biking every weekend. We go road biking during the week. I was like, wow, all right, let me get into this. So
Mhm.
that's a fun story. But I want to know a little more about. So you did Bike Messenger. What else can you share with the audience that's like super gnarly and super motivational, or like life learning lesson? Like, how did you get through it?
That's a great question, my friend. It was I think one of the gnarlier things I experienced, to be honest with you, was psychiatry medication.
Hmm.
I was on a drug called Ritalin growing up. It started, I had to have been in like the fourth grade. So I was I think I was like maybe before the age of 10, a little bit after the age of 10.
Yeah.
And that was kind of intense because at first I remember like I was super happy. I had a lot of energy, just like every other kid does. I was
Yeah.
just the same as every other kid. I was just kind of a class clown too. I got an award for it one year actually. And there was one time they sent me to the principal's office, and as the story goes, my principal explained to my mother that I was either going to be kicked out of school or I had to be on these psych meds, right? So I get put on these psych meds, and at first, like I was just like, okay, this is weird. I'm like, I was like not into it at all. Like I bawled
Mhm.
my eyes out. I was like, I don't want to take these. I don't even know what they are, but I'm
Yeah.
really against this. And my mom, I think, was just kind of in a hard spot because it was like send my kid to school or what do I do type of thing. And so I get put on these drugs.
Mhm.
And initially, it was like not I didn't really have it was like my thoughts kind of drifted away, lost that energy. It was to a point where I didn't really eat as much food. Like I'm pretty sure I skipped some growth phases in my life, like growing just physically. And it got to the point where I was having suicidal thoughts, and that was really hard. And I didn't know it. Like I didn't know that this was a not normal thing.
Mhm.
And so for it just got like from bad to worse too, because it wasn't even like I stopped taking the drugs I think about 3 years after I started them, and fortunately for me I was only taking them during the school year, and I would intentionally skip out on them and stuff like that. But when I got into high school I just quit them altogether
Yeah.
and just gave them away to some friends because they're like, "We want the drugs," and I'm like, "Okay, you take them." And so it just kind of kept going. But even after the drugs, like I still had suicidal thoughts, and it just got from like having the suicidal thoughts to I should act on the suicidal thoughts. And fortunately, I never did anything. I was
Yeah.
always like, when I got to the point of like actually doing something, I was too afraid, which was really good. Um,
Mhm.
but even after 10 years, 15 years later was actually the worst of it because I was kind of already in this bad spot as it was. I was just being like a dishwasher in Montana at the age of like 19 or 20, and I had worked around this guy who is like a 48-year-old dishwasher. So
Mhm.
like earlier on in my going to high school when I thought it was more acceptable. So I
Yeah.
was kind of bummed out on myself. I'm like, I'm not really going anywhere. I'm not really progressing in life. This is just no fun. And then like the after effects of the drugs, like 15 years later, is kicking in harder
Wow.
and when it did when I started taking them.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was really intense to go through, and I mean, I had a whole plan. I was like close to a bridge, and I just had a whole plan that I was like ready to go do, and things just got from bad to worse. Where my father ended up passing away, and so I have that on top of this, and it was interesting, man, because like my dad really wanted me to go into an educational program of any kind. He didn't care what it was. He was just like, join the army. I don't care what you do. Just go into an educational program.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw this life coach previously that was like, you need to go into Job Corps. You'd be a really good candidate for Job Corps. And I was like, okay, cool. So I'll go into, I was like applying for Job Corps, and dude, it was such a trip because the day that my father had passed away, had the cop come to my workplace. My mom was in the cop car, and I got into the cop car. The cop told me, I was just like, what? Like, it wasn't even realistic to me that that had happened.
Yeah.
Drove down about 40 miles away. It was in the middle of winter time. He actually died of hypothermia.
Oh,
So like, was in the middle of winter time, drove through the snow to go to the hospital where he was at, saw his body. It was a really weird experience. Like, I wish they would have not let me just see him, because it's
yeah.
why, what, where's the common sense in that? But I see his body, and then 45 minutes later, like literally on the dot, like going over to a different part of town that's away from the snowy areas. It's sunny,
Mm-hmm.
and I get a call from this random number that I've never seen before. I pick up the phone, and they're like, "This is Job Corps. We want you to come down to Utah. Can you make that happen?" And I look at my mom, and I'm just like blown out of my mind at this point. I'm like just dealing with my father's death and everything, and I'm just like, "Mom, what do I do?" And she's like, "Just tell him yes." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that." And so to me, that was a a God touching moment, because that's not like a quote unquote coincidence. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I deal with that, and I go down to Job Corps. It's actually the exact thing I need. Get away from everyone I know, be in a different environment. I've never met anybody before.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, my life kind of just went in the right direction, where I got into the bricklaying, and then I moved to Colorado, and everything has just gone super good from there. And actually, it was only about 4 months ago I did this one therapy process where I never have had the suicidal thoughts again. I'm like totally free of that. And I keep on having I just break down into tears sometimes, because I'm like, wow, I'm not like thinking about, in the back of my mind, I don't have this little demon that says off yourself or go
Yeah.
jump off a bridge or something like that. So that was like a very mentally enduring thing. But coming out of it, I'm very grateful for it, because it really gives me a different perspective on life. And I can see people who have a really good life and how they live, and then people who have a bad life. And I kind of have this like in between, where my life wasn't super great and it wasn't super bad either. I can kind of see that I'm in this in between transition of like, my life was about, I don't know, I feel like in some cases as average as many people go through. Because I talk with people who've been through the military, and they've taken a bunch of these drugs, and some of them are in much worse situations. And then I look at people who have had a really good life, and I was very fortunate. I was raised by a single mother who had a huge business, and I never had to worry about money. I was always very taken care of, like was able to go out to skateboard camps growing up in California, which was just so fun. And so realistically, going forward now, I just look at it as that's what really made me who I am, and really has turned me into the person that makes me like relatable, and I can get where people are coming from and truly get it. Because when someone's had a really good life, everything's gone super fine for them, everything's been super great for them,
Yeah.
they don't have an understanding of when people are like, man, I'm taking these drugs and things are bad, or they've never touched drugs before, so they really can't even talk or relate to anyone except for the small minority of people. Because I think just in generalities, like there's a lot of people who do take drugs, and I get why that happens, and I get how that happens, and they use it as a coping mechanism for sometimes. Some people just want to do drugs, and that's okay too. But I get and understand more where people are coming from, and it just makes me grateful that I can just be on people's level, and I don't have to have this. I can just be on their level, and I don't have to act like the people where my life has been super great and super wonderful and everything's been taken care of for me. And and I look down on those people who do drugs. I'm like, no, I was one of those people who
Mhm.
did drugs. I was
Yeah.
I was at the age of like, I don't know, 12, and my brother introduced me to alcohol. You know what I mean? And so like I could have gotten into alcoholism, and I saw the signs, and luckily I
Yeah.
was aware of them, so I stopped doing it. But yeah, it's just that was definitely one of the like gnarlier things that have happened to me. Luckily, like I've never been raped before or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I know that's really a
That's really
really
good.
hard one. Yeah.
Wow, man, that was some inspiring story, and
Well, thank you.
I mean, a really, really grateful thing.
Mhm,
Our parents, right? They
mhm,
go through so many things to make sure that we have everything that we need.
mhm,
And it shows, your mom was your support system,
mhm,
right? So having that support, having that anchor in your life,
mm,
it's super, super important.
mhm.
Super, super awesome, man.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's cool because now you know what a good example looks like that. You can do that for your own kids, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Mhm.
Man, so I'm the oldest of so you mentioned you had a brother. How many other siblings did you have?
I actually just have one. He's technically a half brother, but I mean he's my only brother, so I just consider him like we're brothers. And I have him, and that's pretty much it, man. Like he moved out when I was about 10, so from there on I was kind of just like chilling at the house by myself, which was cool. Like it really made me an independent person. Like my mom was definitely the one who raised me. Like my dad wasn't there much either when I grew up, which was in a really cool way. It really has made me an independent person. Like I moved out to Colorado by myself. I'm planning on moving in June by myself. Like I don't really have a tie or a I need to be around family or I have to be around friends. I'm like, I'm just gonna go make new friends, like you experienced when you came to Colorado, because I know we chatted about that a little bit.
No, no, absolutely. That's so cool. Yeah, so I'm the oldest of seven siblings,
Mm, mhm,
and that's a pretty awesome experience too.
mm.
And the one thing that I'm really bad at or really good at is not remembering.
I know what you mean.
So I have very, very faint memory of what my childhood was like. Like I know the milestones, right? I grew up in Pakistan, and I used to like go around in the neighborhood, and I had friends in the neighborhood, and so I remember that, and I remember moving out here
Mhm.
to Saudi Arabia, and like I have very, very little memories of things, and like getting the bike stolen, that's definitely on top of it. Um,
Uh-huh.
there's a lot of different memories, and so anytime I can get connected with my high school friends,
Mhm.
they remind me, I start
Mm,
those memories start coming back.
mhm.
It's really cool that it's cool.
Yeah. So I have a question for you though. So you
Sure.
said you have six other siblings.
Yes.
You're the first of all. You were the first one born. So at one point, did you move to the States and did you have other siblings with you? Was it like four of you moved over to the States, or was it only you? Or
So when we moved to the States, I was um I was the first one to move out here
Mm,
in 95, end of 95, and then my sister, she moved over the next year,
mhm,
and then later on my siblings, they all moved in, one after the other. I think 2003 is when everybody moved out here. But cool part about me is or about moving out here
mhm.
was my mom is one of nine siblings.
Oh my gosh.
So her eight brothers and sisters had already been living in the United States.
Oh.
So remember I told you we came and visited in summer vacation in 85 and 89.
Mhm.
We came here to visit them.
Oh.
So when I moved out here, the family is already set up. There's already like, oh, you go here to meet these guys, there's everything, like the whole family situation is set up. So I didn't really have to make a lot of friends.
Mhm,
I mean, I didn't have time to make a lot of friends because there's
mhm.
so much family.
Yeah.
We have a lot of relatives in California,
Mm,
that live close by. It used to be a smaller number, of course,
mhm.
but over time it grew. And so that's what I'm saying. Denver was the first place I knew nobody
Oh. Mhm,
friends because in California you got family, you got relatives, you got people from school, people from different organizations that you're part of and whatnot. So that was the first time I was like, okay, oh, this is how you make friends.
Mm.
And it was really cool because I think it was mostly my wife who went and connected with the wives of the friends that I made, essentially,
Mm.
right? So that was cool.
Yeah. How was that for you though? Because I mean, so you come that, and that's kind of an interesting thing because you're going from being around your entire family, having 7 siblings, and then coming over to the States where you also have family, and then it makes a very comfortable setting
It is.
to, yeah, to get to know like other people in school and stuff like that, which is cool. What was it like coming to Colorado for the first time and then being like, how do I make a friend? Like, was it confusing at all, or were you ever like, man, I want to go back, or like, what was that scene for you?
So what it was like mostly was that I moved to Colorado for work.
Mhm.
So I already have that anchor in place.
Mm.
So all the people at work, you get those are your friends. Those become your first friends,
Ah. Mhm.
right? So my boss was really cool, and we used to like take smoke breaks, and he would
Mhm.
go smoke, and he like, hey, I'm gonna go take a break. Wanna go? So we'd go, and and because it was me and another guy who had just started working, so we'd just go hang out with him,
Uh-huh.
chat, and talk about what projects we're working on in life and
Yeah.
religion and all these things. So it was really cool.
Uh-huh.
So that was, he was him. Those two guys became essentially my first friends. And
Cool.
then around, I think around summertime, I think it was around June or July, we had the month of Ramadan. Since I'm a Muslim, the month of Ramadan came, where you're going for breaking the fast during
Mhm.
sundown. And then so we were going to the mosque. We're like, all right, what's the closest mosque? And we'd go to
Mhm.
this one place every day, and you meet other people that are just got moved out here as well.
Mm.
So those became the second friends, and those are the ones that are you're hanging out with their families. The kids have somebody to play with.
Mm.
That's the first thing you ask. Oh, how many kids do you have?
Ah,
Like,
okay. So it kind of, uh-huh.
yeah, it's kind of like anytime we go to somebody's house, my oldest son's like, okay, do they have kids?
That makes sense. I would say the same thing if I
Right.
was in his shoes.
Like, I'm going there. I want to make sure that I am entertained as well.
Right.
Really. And so yeah, so that's what it was like. I mean, it's pretty cool. Those are some good questions. We might have to do another episode and go a little bit
Yeah.
deep into that kind of stuff. But
That'd be fun.
so this is the point of the podcast where I have a few questions for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what is one hobby that you wish you got into?
That's a good question. To be honest with you, like I kind of dabbled it in a little bit and I had a lot of fun with it. I would say like jewelry making was
Okay.
definitely a fun thing,
Yeah.
but I kind of wish that I would put a little bit more emphasis on it because I mean, I don't know, like I would make things and I'd be like, oh, that looks cool. And then my brother, like it's a very small thing, right? Like I'd see it, my brother would see it and he'd be like, that's kind of cool, man. And he's like, you could like sell that kind of stuff. I'm like, and I always kind of just downed myself and I'm like, yeah, but it's like, it's just not going to work. Too many people
Yeah.
do it. It's oversaturated market. But like, I feel like I kind of want to get back into that just more on just like a fun level and like making it for friends or like sending one out just to like people I do podcasts with or just like any of those like fun little things that could really make a difference because it's I don't know, I just have a knack for like finding things and then putting them together in kind of like a nifty unique way.
That's really cool. You can have an Etsy shop going on.
There we go. There we go. I'll have to write that down.
Yeah. So, what is your favorite movie or TV show?
I really liked Avatar and American Werewolf in London. They're two kind of I don't know. American Wolf in London is definitely an older one, but Avatar I feel like is one that a lot of people relate with and can kind of have that viewpoint because when you look at it,
Mhm.
Avatar isn't just like a cool movie that had really good graphics. Like it actually kind of relates to the US in a like a very like kind of like whoa type of way. But a lot of good things happened in that movie that didn't
Mhm.
happen in the US because like in the States, like this might be kind of upsetting for some people, but we like hurt a lot of the Native Americans,
Oh yes,
and that's kind of hard. And so like they basically kind of like, I feel, poked at that a little bit in that movie.
they did. Hmm.
And so that was something that really was heartfelt for me, because I've always respected the Native Americans. I have a
Hmm.
very high value for them. I'm like, it's kind of just like a family thing too, where you kind of have that, like you have like the army or like the military, which you respect. And then there's definitely like Native Americans and everything they did and the tribal experiences and stuff like that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
No, Avatar is one of my favorite movies also.
Oh, nice, nice. That's awesome. It's a good movie.
And wait for the next one,
Uh-huh. Oh, is there a second one coming out?
dude.
Dude, like obviously.
Not
My bad.
obviously, but because James Cameron's been talking about it, and
Ah.
he's pushed the date multiple times. Like it was supposed to come out last year,
Mhm.
but it got pushed and pushed because that's one cool thing about James Cameron. I can go on forever.
Uh-huh.
Um, he doesn't get into something unless he knows
Mm,
that he's got the technology done for it. Like
that's
the
cool.
3D technology that was used in Avatar,
Mhm.
he came up with it.
Mm.
Like he is a genius in that area.
Wow.
And what got him started for that movie was when he went and watched the first Star Wars. He was so
Interesting.
pissed.
That's awesome. He was pissed. That's great.
Pissed, like literally. And like since then, he's just been working towards building the technology to, make his mark on the world.
Wow.
Titanic, he did a lot of underwater videos, movies, and then he did the 3D tech, and then Avatar happened. And
Mm.
it blew the box office. It's like the best sold movie. I don't
Mm.
know if it surpassed Titanic or not.
Wow.
All right, so yeah, awesome. What is your favorite superhero?
Favorite superhero? That is a good question. I definitely like Spider-Man and still like Spider-Man for a few reasons. He's an acrobat. I grew up as a gymnast,
Mm,
and his ability to fight is something that's just like, it's clever and it's funny and it's unique, where he's usually smaller than most of his enemies, and so he goes up against these people that are a lot bigger than him. And actually, I'm just realizing this now, I've like gotten into fights with my dad and my brother, and both of them, like, I got into fights with my dad when I was like, I would say 6. And so here's this like full grown 6'3" guy that's definitely a lot bigger than me, and I'm like crawling on his back, and I'm like choke holding him, and he's like hitting me against I don't know. Anyway, but Spider-Man definitely, because he's clever and he's funny, and he kind of gets under the skin of his opponents, and kind of really like mind screws with them first, which, if you notice, like Muhammad Ali does that too, where he kind of got under their skin a little bit before they even got into the ring and fought with
Oh, that's interesting. I'll have to look into that.
them.
Perfect. Okay. Last question.
Mhm.
If you were a board game, what would it be?
Dude, that's such a good question. I would definitely have to say chess.
All right. All right. Awesome.
Yeah,
That's a good game. That's a good game.
it is.
Cool. So, Ian, you have a nickname. You want to share that, or you want to tell us
For-
a little story about that?
Sure. So my nickname's Sunshine. It's kind of fitting because I've always had a very, I don't even know if I've had necessarily an optimistic viewpoint, but people like to clarify it as that. And I guess I looked into optimism, and it's kind of like making the best out of the worst situation and scenario you have. I think people have a different, maybe like a different thought process they have for the word optimism, but that's one of the definitions that I think fits the most, and people kind of like get relate to. And a lot of it has to do with like, even when I was going through like some of the more like, I don't know, just looking back on my life, it's just a lot of, things could have been worse. Things could have
Yeah.
been much more upsetting. Things could have sucked. Things could have been this way.
Hmm.
And I just try to take life kind of as looking at it from like, it could have been worse, and it wasn't, some parts weren't that fun, but I look at it more from a benefit point of like, but like, look where I'm at now, and
Yeah.
look how hard I'm trying now, and look where I'm going in this direction. I just have a much more upbeat mentality instead of this life has happened to me, and I'm more viewing it from I am making life happen.
Nice.
Yeah.
Perfect. I love it.
Thanks.
Well, Ian,
Uh-huh.
sunshine, thank you so much for your time. This was a really awesome conversation.
Yeah.
We got to touch on some really cool points that we both jive in, and we
Uh-huh.
I definitely need to get on a call with you again and
Yeah.
talk about some of these cool things because, man, this is awesome.
Agreed. Yeah, man, it's fun chatting with you. It'd be fun to hear more about your kiddos and
Yeah, yeah.
just like the culture that you've gone with your religion. Like, do you refer to it more of a religion, or is it more like a lifestyle? Because it sounds like it's more of a lifestyle because you're
It
fasting
is
for
a
30 days.
lifestyle, actually.
Yeah,
Islam is a way of life because
interesting. Huh?
they, in Islam, like if you look at the U.S. Constitution
Mhm,
and the the rights of human, I mean, there's a lot of similarities
mhm,
with Islam. And be good to the neighbor. And it's like in Islam, they say everybody who's around you, 40 houses down, is
mhm,
your neighbor, and you need to make sure that they're doing well and they're not in trouble. And if you can help in any way, you need to do your best. And that's one of the mentalities that Islam brings to you.
mhm.
Um,
I like that.
it's really powerful, and it'll take another podcast to go into a
Mhm.
lot of these things. But yeah, absolutely, man. We can have another chat and talk about those things.
Yeah, that would be really cool because I feel like I've kind of been in multiple religions throughout my life, and like I really like your viewpoint and the 40 houses down sort of thing because that's true. It's not just about your house and your neighbor's house; it's about everybody's house. It's trying to make sure that everybody's doing well versus just me and my friends.
Yeah, yeah. Cool, man. Well, thank you so much again. We'll chat with you soon.
That sounds great, my friend. Looking forward to it.
See you.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode on Hacks and Hobbies. We absolutely appreciate your contribution. You can find additional notes on hacksandhobbies.com. Please share the podcast with your friends and tell them what you learned about our guest today.